the phrase that will make people never say no to you. In our daily lives, every day, we constantly face the need to receive some help, support, or action from other people. This can be something simple, asking a colleague for help with a report that needs to be submitted by the end of the day, asking a friend to lend their car to move things, or trying to persuade a child to put away their toys scattered across the living room. Our days are filled with such requests, large and small, and we instinctively believe that the most effective way to get what we want is to simply ask directly. We formulate our request as clearly as possible, trying to be polite but straightforward, expecting either an agreement or a refusal in response. However, as practice shows, very often we encounter a polite and sometimes not so polite no. Or, what's even worse, we ourselves are afraid to ask, anticipating rejection, and thus miss opportunities that could significantly ease our lives or help us achieve our goals. Remember how many times you were about to ask for a raise but never dared, fearing your boss's refusal. Or how often you wanted to ask a neighbor for help with heavy work but were too shy so as not to hear no. We are accustomed to thinking that a direct request is the most effective method, but why then do so many of our requests remain fruitless, causing only disappointment and a sense of helplessness? The problem is that our instinctive, straightforward approach to requests is actually less effective than we think. When we ask directly, we put the person in a dilemma, say yes and possibly feel burdened, or say no and perhaps experience guilt or awkwardness. Many people tend to refuse to avoid the discomfort associated with potential obligations or inconvenience. As a result, we get a refusal, even if our request is quite reasonable and feasible. We feel frustrated, and the person we addressed the request to might feel uncomfortable. But what if there's a surprising secret way that allows you to get yes much more often, even from those who were not initially inclined to cooperate, and at the same time they will feel comfortable without feeling deceived or coerced? This sounds almost like magic, but in reality, it's a deep understanding of human psychology, based on principles that constantly operate in our minds. We will talk about how one phrase, which is actually an entire communication strategy, can completely change the dynamic of your requests. This strategy is based on how our brain processes information, contrasts, and the sense of fairness. It allows you to create conditions under which people are much more willing to accommodate you because it aligns with their own internal decision-making mechanisms rather than being a result of direct pressure or persuasion. It is important to emphasize right away, this is not about dark psychology, not about manipulation in a negative sense that harms another person or forces them to do something they absolutely do not want. On the contrary, it's about a deep understanding of how the principles of compromise and reciprocity work in human communication. This is an ethical way of influencing that allows you to achieve your goals while maintaining and even strengthening relationships with those around you. We aim not to deceive or force, but to create a situation in which agreeing will be a natural and logical choice for your interlocutor. Let's look at how this manifests in everyday life with examples from American or Western culture. Example 1. Requesting help with volunteering. Imagine you are a charity event organizer in your city in California and you need volunteers. Your main goal is to find someone to dedicate a few hours of help on the event day. If you simply approach someone and say, "Could you help us at the event on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.?" you might get a refusal because they might already be busy or don't want to commit. This is a direct request that leaves little room for maneuver. Example 2. Arranging homework with a child. In a typical American family, a parent wants their child, e.g., a 12-year-old teenager, to do their homework. A direct command, "Go to your homework right now," is often met with resistance, procrastination, or unwillingness. The child feels pressured, and their natural reaction is to withdraw. Example 3. Asking for help at work. In an office in Seattle, you urgently need a colleague's help with part of a project to meet a deadline. A direct request, "Can you help me with this tonight? I need to stay late?" might be met with reluctance, as the colleague might have their own plans. In all these scenarios, a direct request, while seemingly logical, often encounters barriers, reluctance to commit, lack of time, or simply a reluctance to feel obligated. We instinctively avoid no, which makes us either not ask at all or feel disappointed when we get a refusal. However, what if we could change this dynamic? What if instead of going head-on, we could create an invisible path to agreement that your interlocutor chooses themselves? This is what we will talk about, the secret that will allow you to reframe your requests in such a way as to get what you want much more often while strengthening relationships, not destroying them. In the next part, we will delve into how exactly this phrase works and what psychological principles lie behind it. In the first part, we found that our direct requests often encounter refusals and that this happens because people don't want to feel burdened or awkward saying no. We touched on the idea of a secret way to get yes much more often. Now we will delve into the essence of this phrase, or more precisely, a very effective tactic known in social psychology as the door-in-the-face technique, enhanced by the powerful principle of reciprocity. This is not manipulation in a negative sense, not a way to deceive or coerce someone. On the contrary, it is a skillful, ethical use of natural human tendencies towards compromise and mutual assistance, two deeply ingrained principles in our psyche. The whole point of this technique consists of two clear and sequential steps. 1. You start with a very large, almost certainly unfeasible or difficult to fulfill request. This is your door in the face, a request so grand that you expect and want to receive a refusal. It's important that this first request is realistic enough not to appear absurd, ridiculous, or insulting. It should simply be significantly exaggerated compared to your true goal. For example, if you want your neighbor in Texas to bring you a carton of milk from the store, your true, small request, you might start by asking to borrow their pickup truck for the entire day to move furniture for your new house across town. This request will likely make them think about the time spent, gas, and inconvenience. This is an inflated request for which you anticipate a refusal. 2. After you receive a refusal to this large request, you immediately follow it with your true, much smaller and more reasonable request, which was the entire point from the beginning. This happens immediately without a long pause so that the contrast effect is maximized. Continuing the example with the neighbor, after they say, "Oh, sorry, buddy, I need the pickup myself today," or "I'd love to help, but I can't lend it for the whole day, I have my own things to do," you respond with understanding, "Okay, I understand. That's too big of a request. Sorry to take up your time. But listen, since you're going to the store anyway, could you pick up a carton of milk for me on the way?" And here, an amazing combination of psychological principles comes into play that makes a person much more willing to agree to the smaller request. Firstly, the principle of reciprocity works. This is one of the most powerful principles of social influence. When you make a concession by lowering your initial, huge request to something much more modest, the interlocutor subconsciously feels an obligation to reciprocate your concession. This is an unstated rule of a favor for a favor, or if you gave in to me, I'll give in to you too. You have, in a way, done them a favor by withdrawing your large request, and now they experience internal discomfort if they don't reciprocate by agreeing to the smaller one. This is a basic human instinct to maintain balance in social interactions. Secondly, the contrast principle comes into play. Our psyche perceives things in comparison. Your true, much smaller, and more reasonable request seems much more modest, easier, and even insignificant against the backdrop of the initial, huge request. A carton of milk after a full day of using a pickup truck is nothing. The interlocutor's brain makes an instant comparison, and the second request is perceived as something extremely minor and easily fulfilled. If you had originally asked only for milk, that request might have been perceived as a regular hassle. But after the refusal to the large request, it looks like a very small and even kind favor. Thirdly, a feeling of guilt or relief is triggered. The person might experience a slight, often unconscious, feeling of guilt for refusing your first large request. This internal discomfort is a powerful motivator for compensation. Therefore, they will be more willing to agree to the second, smaller request to alleviate this internal tension, to make amends, or simply to feel helpful and benevolent. They experience relief from not having to lend the pickup truck for the entire day, and this relief makes them more amenable to the smaller request. Let's look at a few more examples from American life to see how this works. Example 1. Volunteering at a charity event, continued. You are a charity event organizer in California. Your true goal is to find someone to dedicate a few hours of help on the event day, e.g., 3 to 4 hours. Large request. Would you be able to lead the entire volunteer team for our charity marathon next Saturday? It would take up the whole day from early morning until late evening and require a lot of organizational work. You expect a refusal. This is too much. Reaction. The person will likely say, wow, that sounds great, but I can't, I already have plans for the whole day, or that's a huge responsibility, I'm not sure I can handle it. Small request, okay, I understand, that's a huge commitment. Sorry to burden you, but perhaps you could spare just 3 to 4 hours in the middle of the day to help us with participant registration. Result: the likelihood of getting agreement for 3 to 4 hours will be significantly higher because compared to the request to lead the entire team for the whole day. 3 to 4 hours seem like a very modest and easily fulfillable commitment, and the person feels obligated to reciprocate. Example 2. Homework with a child continued. A parent wants their child, a 12-year-old teenager, to do their homework, the true small request. Large request: sweetie, could you please read 2 chapters of this boring history textbook tonight and write a 5-page essay on them? It'll take you all evening. Reaction: the child will likely sigh, roll their eyes and say, Mom/Dad, are you serious? That's too much. Small request: okay, I see that's too much. I understand you're tired, but then just do your usual math homework and read a paragraph from history. Result: after the dreadful essay, regular homework seems easy and reasonable, and the child, feeling they've negotiated a concession, will be more willing to agree. They feel like a winner. Important nuances for using this technique. Realism of the first request. The first, large request should be realistic enough not to appear absurd or insulting. If you ask a neighbor to give you their house and then ask for milk, it will seem foolish and only cause irritation. The large request should be such that it is in principle feasible, but it is almost guaranteed to be refused due to its scale. Promptness of the second request. The second, smaller request should follow the refusal immediately. If too much time passes, the contrast and reciprocity effect will weaken. Same requester and requestee. It is desirable that both the large and small requests are addressed by the same person and addressed to the same person. Absence of pressure. The tone of your voice should be calm and understanding, without pressure or reproach. You should appear as if you genuinely accept the refusal to the first request and are now making a compromise. All these principles are based on the idea that you are not trying to manipulate in a negative sense, but rather creating a situation where agreeing seems like a simpler, more logical, and more advantageous choice for the interlocutor, because they feel that they have also been met halfway. This allows you to get what you want much more often, strengthening relationships rather than destroying them, as the person themselves feels part of the solution, not a victim of the request. We have come a long way in our exploration of how to get yes much more often. In the first part, we realized the limitations of straightforward requests, and in the second, we delved into the essence of the door-in-the-face technique, enhanced by the principles of reciprocity and contrast. Now it's time to bring all this knowledge together and understand how this strategy can become your valuable skill, transforming your communication. In conclusion, we emphasize that the door-in-the-face technique is not a way to deceive people or force them to do what they don't want. It is not dark psychology in a negative sense. On the contrary, it is a valuable skill for effective communication, deeply rooted in respect for the interlocutor's psychology. It is the ability to get what you want without resorting to direct pressure, but by creating conditions under which people themselves want to compromise and feel that it is their own, reasonable choice. The whole secret is that these dual signals, a large request followed by a smaller one, act very quickly. Often, within 30 seconds after the initial refusal to the large request and the subsequent reduction of the request, the perception of your request can completely change. The interlocutor subconsciously shifts their tactic from no to yes, because they sense your compromise and feel obligated to reciprocate. This is not about forcing someone to comply by force. It's about naturally eliciting their desire to help because you yourself have made concessions and demonstrated flexibility. The true power here is manifested not in pressure, but in the skillful use of human inclination towards compromise and reciprocity, which allows you to guide the conversation in the desired direction, maintaining a strategic advantage. Consider how you can implement the door-in-the-face technique into your daily life. At work, if you need a colleague's help with a large task, start with a request for more substantial involvement. Could you help me compile this entire report over the weekend? After their refusal, offer a smaller but desired request. Okay, I understand that's a lot, but could you at least look at this part and give me advice for half an hour? In the family, if you want your child to clean their room, first ask them to do something very laborious. Please wash all the dishes, vacuum the whole house, and clean the garden. After their refusal, suggest, okay, that's too much, but can you please just clean your room? In communication with friends, if you need to borrow a large sum of money, start with a larger amount than you actually need. Can you lend me $500 until the end of the month? If your friend refuses or hesitates, ask for the smaller, real amount. I understand that's a lot. How about $100? I just need to get by until payday. Implementing this strategy will allow you not only to achieve your goals more effectively and harmoniously, but also to build stronger relationships based on a sense of fairness and mutual respect. People will feel comfortable accommodating you because they perceive it as their own reasonable choice, not as an imposed obligation. Ultimately, every no to your large request will be perceived as a stepping stone to their yes to your true one.